have a special guest in the studio. Winston Peters sitting beside me laughing, and I haven't even said anything funny yet. Nice to have you here, Mr. Peters.
It's good to be here.
How's the campaign trail going? How was your day today?
Very fascinating day.
You got booed in Morrinsville, didn't you?
Well, I got cheered as well. I mean, that's in the article. If you go and see it on live, and I got it on my Facebook, it's getting thousands of people looking at it. But the reality is I went to a protest which was thoroughly depoliticised for a purpose, just to blame the Labour Party and the Greens. And I went down to say, hang on, you guys, you've got a massive charge being secretly applied by December of this year by the National Party.
What is it? What is that massive charge?
Well, it's an arrangement that Mr. Finlayson has been, and with the National Party and other senior ministers, entering into the charging of water by Maori in equal control and authority, with all the documentation I put out today,
Yeah,
with equal control and authority with the local council, and no one's telling anybody about that.
No, that's not going to directly impact on farmers, is it?
Oh, yes, it is.
Fiscally. How much? How much will it cost them?
Well, that's my point. How much does this all mean to the farmer or the commercial user of water in New Zealand? Because on Lake Taupo, it's costing each user $25 just to get an annual licence.
So if you're the white knight turning up to save them from the predations of Maori and Christopher Finlayson, why did they boo you?
No, because you've got a number of National Party people who are so obsessed with the Labour Party and the Greens, and quite rightly so on this question. They're blinded to the fact their own party is going to, and has already entered these arrangements. And it's out there. I'm putting it out there because 5 days out from the election, the farming community don't know just what they're in for.
No, they don't know what they're in for. And does New Zealand First know what they're in for? Let's go back to your media release of 10th of August. Labour's water tax means $18 cabbages. Do you stand by that?
Well, that's what the market...
You don't. If you give me a straight answer, if you say that was complete utter bollocks, I got that wrong, we'll move on.
Well, guess where I got it from? Say it's bollocks. I got it from the market gardeners.
Right.
They might know a bit about costings.
Yeah, but they didn't know about Labour's water.
Let me tell you something. It depends on the water charge. Now, Labour went from 1 cent to 2 cents.
Okay.
That's a 100% increase.
But at 1
and then 500 million.
Yeah, but 1 or 2 cents, even the 100% increase, even if we go from 1 to 2, you don't get
But
$18
but stop there. 1 cent, 2 cents, or 500 million, or, as Jacinda Ardern said, we'll settle it with the stakeholders after the election. So it could be high, but you don't know, do you?
Read that headline out to me.
Yeah, I agree. That sounds
means $18
extravagant, but that's where we got it from. 3 market gardeners said what we're hearing means that. And of course, Labour Party's changed its policy 4 times. You know that.
Isn't this what you do? I mean, someone said to me over the weekend, I really like...
I'm a marvellous journalist, won't I? I report the facts.
No,
I just report the facts.
You don't. Only if the facts are fluid and suit you.
Well, at that time, no one knew what the charges were, and people were doing the calculations.
But if they didn't know, they weren't facts.
No, sorry, with what they did know, because you remember, the Labour Party went from 1 cent to 2 cents to 500 million for the year. That's what That's what David Parker said, and then you had Jacinda saying, "But we'll sort it out after the election." So you don't know what it is, do you? Now, none of us knows.
I want to put this to you. Somebody spoke to me over the weekend. They said, "I really like Winston Peters. He keeps the bastards honest." Do you like that description of you keeping the bastards honest?
That must be the most difficult job that's possibly in politics.
Yeah, except
but over the years
doesn't that speak to your brilliance as an opposition politician? For example, Labour's water tax means $18 cabbages. You knew it didn't mean $18 cabbages. No. And I'd like to move on from that specific example.
3 market gardeners thought so I thought maybe they know more about production and cost of vegetables than you and I.
3 market gardeners.
Yes.
But isn't that your brilliance? Aren't you the guy who just whacks things up there? $18 cabbages, Maori destroying, isn't that what you do? And doesn't
Can I give you a recap? Quickly. Maori loans affair, right? The BNZ scandal, the wine box scandal, the Fuji Xerox, the most recent one, 500 million blowout. I'm being ignored for a whole year, alerting my country, and over comes the head of Fuji Xerox Japan and apologises to all the people of New Zealand. Whose story is he backing up? Mine. I do my homework. That's why I do keep the system honest. I go to the wire when I do the right research. And the 3 market gardeners say that on day 1.
3 market gardeners?
Yes, that's what I said at the time.
Doesn't that make you a great opposition politician? And
well, I'll tell you what, if you're no good in opposition, you're going to be no good in government. Right. I'll tell you why, because you're not going to ask civil servants the question you have to ask. And what will happen is the bureaucracy will run rings around you, which is what I see all the time. And I see the internationalists. I see some of our people going to trade and deal with the Chinese and with the Koreans. They run rings around them. We come back, we end up with a free trade deal, 173% tariffs from Korea, and that's why I say, to be good in government, you've got to be good in opposition as well.
You put out a strange media release on Friday night. I've just lost it, and I want to find it because I was sitting in
this. Name what it's about, and I'll tell you what it's about.
Okay, here it is. Filthy rumour, dirty campaign. Can I read it out? I was approached by a senior journalist this afternoon. I was sitting in the Checkpoint studio on Friday night, and I thought, what the hell is this about? I was approached by a senior journalist this afternoon whose opening question was, how is your health? I made it very clear to him that if he or any other party thinks that spreading malicious rumours will not be met with the full force of the law available to me, then he and they would be very much mistaken. What the hell is that media release about? Don't give me your come hither smile. What's this about?
It's about a dirty campaign to take Winston Peters out of the selection with vicious rumours, and I decided...
What are the vicious rumours?
Well, I'm not going to tell you that because I just compound the sin that they are going to be guilty of if they repeat it. You know how defamation law works. You defame somebody and you help spread the defamation, then the damage is mitigated. Now, you know, I'm not going to give you a legal answer here, but when I see filth and dirt, and I'm forewarned of it, I was forewarned of this.
Were you forewarned of what?
About this, yes. About these people are going to start taking on issues to do with your health. And I thought, oh, no, you don't.
Who are these people?
They're people who are so bereft of answers to my campaign and my policies that dirt is what they specialise in, and we all know it. And I tell you what, some of your colleagues in the media know about it, so it's no surprise to them. But I thought, I'm not going to take this.
Are they the same people responsible for leaking your superannuation information?
Funny enough, the people who are informing me from within a certain party that this is coming were the same people who think that this is wrong, it's dirty, they don't want the National Party to be associated with it. That's where it comes from.
So it's the National Party?
It's been picked up by other parties.
It's the National Party?
Sadly it is, yeah, sad to say. But I'm bound to defend those who have got a sense of character and decency, who say this is wrong.
Do you think that do you think that New Zealand First voters will put you in the position on Saturday night of determining who is the next Prime Minister of New Zealand?
Not me, no. Look, not me. I have colleagues, I have a full board. We're a party with thousands of us. Can I just say, I wish I could answer your question. Honestly, I wish I could answer your question because I've had it asked probably 1,000 times in the last 5 weeks.
Yeah.
But
3 years ago, and 3 years before that, I remember 1996.
Well, you know,
I remember Jim Bolger in the Beehive, Helen Clark in Bowen House.
Here comes Winston.
You went back and forward across the travelator.
Well, I've had 24
looking
years.
like the Beatles, so many people were following you as you were called.
Well, it's a sad thing, but the reality of the matter is that, look, the things are changing so fast, and I can tell you privately things that I seriously suspect that might blow in the next few days that will change the way people vote. We all need to know what those are. And some of them are filthy, some of them are nasty, and if somebody blows them with facts, then they will change the next election.
I'm a bit confused, though. If MMP is Cuisinart odds, you know MMP, my goodness, you've made MMP work for you. If MMP is getting the biggest stack, why on earth would the Nats defame you when, in fact, they may need you to remain in government?
Because they'd rather deal with compliant puppets like the Maori Party, the United Party, and the ACT Party, for whom they have had fundraising for all three parties separately. I mean, the Maori Party had fundraising dinners at the Northern Club, the citadel of Maoridom, as you well know, where there was $10,000 plate dinners, organised by the National Party. You know, that's a jack-up, right?
How many MPs does ACT going to have?
ACT?
Yeah.
They're lucky they get one. They'll probably get one.
So Davidson was going to win Epsom. Do you reckon you can bring anyone else in, get 1.2 and a bit percent?
Well, whatever it is an absolute shell of its former self.
How many MPs?
United Party's gone, as you know.
Yeah, I do know. How many MPs is the Māori Party going to have?
Well, they probably get Jimbo and Turo these days.
And Waiariki?
I think he'll get in, but you can't.
Hauora, Howie Tamati in Tariana Turia's old seat?
No, I don't think so, no.
Oh, okay, so you're thinking one or two there.
Well,
in other
can
words,
I tell you the tragedy is that the Maori Party terribly abused the Kingitanga or the King movement in this campaign, to the great shame, I think, and that's going to set things back for decades. It's very sad to see that, but, you know, that's what they've done. That's how desperate they have been.
So National are going to have to do incredibly well, given the small number of seats that
and
you
that's why that's why they wish to take Winston Peters out. But, of course, they'll be the first ones on the phone on election night if they haven't been successful.
Will you answer it?
It's not for me to answer.
Oh, yes, it is. Who are you talking about?
Well, because I'll be so busy talking to you.
Right.
Right.
I look forward to that. You were sitting outside when we had that story about the Southern DHB and men with prostate cancer who had such delays to their treatment that it is actually going to shorten their lives. Doesn't that speak to something very seriously wrong in our health system?
It speaks to something worse than that. It speaks to the lack of integrity of our political system when you've had so many people saying that we've had all this billions of dollars of extra funding and what have you, and there's someone's life truncated. Sad to say. I mean, I don't want to add to his misery by saying I feel sorry for him, but it was totally unnecessary. He gets told to come in September. That is, September he gets referred. He doesn't get referral to February, and 10 months later from the first referral, he gets an operation. He should have had that operation in the first 2 weeks from start to finish.
6 weeks. 6 weeks was the measure.
That was the outside limit that was being promised to people. But here's the point here. When you look at that 25% and that prognosis, you don't know how many are the bad prognosis because that's the bad record or ratio of this complaint, or is it because 15% of them been delayed? That's tragic. And here's the point here. Every district health board, 13 district health boards are massively underfunded.
And can I interrupt and point out that the DHB, Southern DHB, had such a problem with deficit that the Health Minister, Jonathan Coleman, who we asked to appear on Checkpoint tonight, and he wasn't available to come on, sacked the board and appointed his own commissioner with the view of driving the deficit down. Now, I asked Nigel Miller this evening, was the deficit problematic? And he said no, he doesn't believe it's directly responsible, although it is difficult to operate under a deficit. This brings us to more money for Vote Health.
There's no doubt about it. Look, we're probably 1.7 billion down on what we need minimum. That's the reality of it all. And if you compare us with other first world nations and the ratio of expenditure per person, that's what the government never says. They just say, we're spending these billions. They don't say per person. Now, the sad thing is, look, I listened to that doctor, what's his name, Nigel Miller, and I felt damn sad for him as well. Really, I felt sad for him because he's a professional who is on there trying to explain away while someone has got a abbreviated, shortened life who didn't have to have it that way.
Do you believe your party is disproportionately likely, more than any other party, to have elderly supporters?
Yes.
Okay, great. Couldn't you do more for them by letting National have its way with superannuation going to 60 over an incredibly long term, rather than making a line in the sand that it remains at 65, and better target problems in the healthcare that elderly people are receiving?
Well, yes, but their target is to the year 2040. I don't think it's going to help anybody right now. It needs to get into a district health board and get serious attention right now. And on the question of targeting older people or helping older people, if we had three free doctor's visits a year for gold card carriers, for example, and only one goes to hospital of 100 who didn't have to, only one didn't go to hospital because of this, because they got to the doctor early enough, then it'll be fiscally neutral. If 2 out of 100 don't go to hospital, that's the cost of hospitalisation, we'll be seriously saving money.
But I see the point you're making. And you're making points around the fiscals, that in other words, people who can't afford to go to the GP go to outpatients instead, right?
Too late, yeah.
Which clogs up hospitals, and then if they wait too long, then they But he went to his GP and was referred to the hospital, and the hospital sent him packing. As you say, they didn't give him surgery for 10 months. The problem is at the surgical end, isn't it?
Roll it back a bit. The problem is they don't realise that investment in people's health is actually an investment. It's not a cost. If you were running a cattle farm, I don't want to use this analogy, but if you're running a cattle farm, you would see this as your capital, your asset capital, and you'd look after it. But we're not looking after people. He goes from being independent of the state to dependent, and a miserable existence, and his family going down with him. This is all avoidable. That's my point. But I can remember the arguments we've had, and I don't want to attack any particular minister now because they've been going on for some time. But I can remember when that district health board got dealt to and they were characterised as being incompetent and inept. They just didn't have the money. My district health board up north is way short. They're not even putting an annualised report because they don't want to report that they're so short of money.
Are you going to hold Northland?
Yes, I am. If the people up there want to sheet home the change of 2015, where for the first time a province neglected for decades got remembered, then I'm going to bag it home easily.
Doesn't that speak to the point that I was making earlier, that a by-election is a classic opportunity to make a statement against the government? And it's brilliant to vote for an opposition party then.
And it is in government as well, because I'll tell you something, up north there, if I want to give you an example, we've got a pipeline problem. The only replacement right now in these days of waiting would be a train line all the way to Marsden Point, and we haven't got one.
Yeah.
Doesn't that spell out the message here?
Yeah. Okay. Let's say you've got the National Party, people in the National Party potentially defaming you, trying to shaft you, leaking information against you.
Well, it's just some of them.
Yeah, some of them. I just want to talk about the phone calls that you or somebody from New Zealand First, who we all know will be you, is potentially going to receive, all going well for you, after election night. What are the non-negotiables for you? For example, the referendum on Maori seats. Is that a non-negotiable?
Well, look, it's a referendum.
A midterm. It's not. It's a midterm referendum.
No. We'll add it to other referenda. But let me say this here.
It's not a midterm referendum anymore.
Well, you can make it at the end of the term if you like.
So you're making it. It's not me.
Well, you got to look at the practicalities of it all.
Oh,
if you
hold
want
on
to save costs.
No. You said it was midterm. Is it not midterm now? I'm prepared to accept that.
No, I believe there should be a midterm. But if we're going to have a big argument about it, and they say, well, can you delay?
So you're resigning from the term. It could be next election.
If you can delay, if they say, look, there's good reason to delay it 18 months, and here comes the question of cost, then we might say agree on that. But it's a referendum.
You just did that then, didn't you? You just moved back from that position.
Well, I didn't move back from it. I just said to you, we go into a situation. If you go in, like North Korea dealing with South Korea, all you get is nuclear war. You've got to go in and prepare to say compromise, but you go in to get as much as you possibly can.
So that's not a non-negotiable. As long as
I never said any of these things are non-negotiable. I'm saying, and look, in the interest of Maori, where house ownership has declined by 25% in the last, by 38% in the last 25 years, what's going wrong with our political representation? Face the facts. The mass majority of Maori who are entitled to go on a Maori roll because they're qualified to are on the general roll. So if you want to stand by and delay the change in history, the civil rights movement in the United States, the reason why they end up with a black president is they try to smash down the doors of discrimination into the best of what America have. Here we got Maori trying to set up separatism.
Okay.
And that's why I think
so you're prepared. You're prepared to say it doesn't have to be midterm. It can be after 3 years. That's a development.
Well, maybe, yes.
That's a development on your position. Okay. Superannuation at 65.
You all know that I'm the most reasonable man, but I'm adamant on principle.
I've never ever heard you described as the most reasonable man by anyone ever.
Really?
Do you really think you're reasonable?
I'm a very reasonable person. Really? But I don't sell myself out or my principles out. That's the reason why I left 2 cabinets. Two cabinets.
Yes.
Two cabinets because I would not accept
Minister of Maori
doing.
Affairs under Jim Bolger. Are you looking back on that and saying, I was blowing the whistle against what was taking place in that first term?
I was.
Okay. Thank you.
I was.
Can we talk about...
He went from the biggest majority who hung Parliament in 3 years flat.
Yeah.
I got a bit of evidence backing up that I was right, right?
Yeah, the Decent Society, they campaigned on 1990. Labor had spontaneously combusted. That's right. In 1993,
mother of all budgets
they squeaked home. They squeaked home.
No, that is squeaked home by asking Peter Tapsell to be the Speaker. He was a Labor member.
Okay.
Otherwise, it was...
Let's
first call...
Sorry, it was my fault I raised this, but there's so many things I want to ask you.
The first call that came in on 1993, election night 1993, the first call I got was from Jim Bolger. I've got 2 MPs, I should have had 3. Right. But he's calling me.
65. Labor is saying 65, National is saying 67. Is that a non-negotiable for you? Because you were saying to your party, it's 65, full stop, superannuation.
Look, what I'm trying to say to you is this. If it's the question of affordability, which they all argue, then how come these old parties and all these people who are too gutless to speak up on immigration allowed 87,000 in the last 15 years to come in here and get full super after just 10 years?
Right. Answer the question.
Yes.
Is it a non-negotiable? 65, is it a non-negotiable? Because if it's a non-negotiable, you can't work with the Nats, can you?
The National Party is trying to govern like Labor for the next 3 years. Their policy rates are 2040. It's not relevant now.
So you're prepared to accept that policy? You're prepared to live with that
policy?
policy?
I'm not. Well, they're not going to be moving it to 97 in the next 3 years.
You were reminding me of Nadia Comaneci. You're sounding so flexible tonight. I mean, this is 5 days out from the election,
she's such an old analogy. I can't bear that you're using it alongside me.
Right, what do you stand for most of all?
The age is staying at 65.
3 minutes.
What do I stand for?
Yeah, most of all.
I stand for, most of all, a dramatic economic and social change to that which we've had the last 33 years.
Meaningfully.
Well, the last 33 years we had a neoliberal experiment that's just gone so wrong.
No, don't look back. Look forward. Meaningfully.
Well, I want to correct what's wrong, because you cannot go forward unless you fix up what's wrong. Now, the second thing about it is, you said meaningful food policy?
No, through policy. Meaningful, through policy.
Yeah, through policy.
What is the policy you're going to say to Jacinda Ardern and Bill English? I must have this. What is it?
You'll go glazed-eyed, but if you want to grow real wealth in this country, which is dependent upon exports, change the Reserve Bank Act to reflect that we're an export-dependent economy. Then you'll get all sorts of people growing the wealth of this country, not exporting, declining, which it is. And we're getting deeper and deeper into debt. And we haven't paid our way for a long time. I want to change the tax policy to do with exports. I want to change the tax policy to do with business people. So we become a country rather like, for example, Singapore, or, for example, Taiwan or Ireland.
Singapore, where you get fined for dropping litter.
Well, I didn't talk about social policy. I'm talking about economic policy.
Okay, economic policy.
You're being rather particular.
Yes,
now.
I am. No, but
you've been right off the mark.
You've got to be particular with it, because otherwise, 2 minutes later, you'll tell me 3 market gardeners told you.
No, but I've seen tremendous progress made by people who know that if you take assets and add value to them, that's where great wealth is.
And how do you do that?
Well, you make sure that your log's not going offshore in the most raw state.
Yeah, but how do you do that as a government?
Well, you have a New Zealand log price.
Hold on a second. This is private enterprise. The logs are going offshore because...
right there, you put your hand on it. You said this is private enterprise. No, it's not. 10 of our top 10 forestry companies, 8 are foreign-owned. Right. They're not running the economy for New Zealand anymore. So we're running it for overseas interests.
What do you do with them to make them add value and employ people in New Zealand?
As we told them 2 weeks ago in a big conference of forestry interests, which New Zealand first called in Whangarei, gentlemen and ladies, we want these logs added value in our country first. We want to keep our businesses that are dependent upon logs open first. We're going to be like Canada. You're not going to put these logs offshore until our people need wood can get it at an affordable price.
Okay, who do you think will be the next Prime Minister of New Zealand? We've got 50 seconds.
I have no idea who the next Prime Minister will be for next New Zealand, of New Zealand. All I can say that some of the aspirants will not be.
That was a crap answer. Who would you prefer? Who would you prefer?
Look, if you go into negotiations preferring anyone, you're leaving your team behind. You're not giving your country a chance. You're putting your personal bias out there. And at the end of the day, you might not think this, but in the end, it's a bitter pill you've got to swallow here.
And that means you are much more pragmatic and flexible than you have been letting on prior to this moment, right? And you've got 17 seconds.
Well, let me just tell you, I'm very proud to have come in here and finally been properly analysed by someone who wouldn't know.
Oh, no, stop it. No, stop it. Cheap shot. Answer the question. You're prepared to do deals. It's 6 o'clock.
Well, you've always got to be prepared to do deals, but in the national interest, not your own. Got it? Thank you very much.